Hi, I'm Walt Hickey with ABC News Digital. You have questions about Iron Fist, we have answers. I'm joined by Marvel's Axel Alonso, ABC's Mike Rothman, and out on the line we've got Ed Brisson, who's writing the forthcoming issues of Iron Fist. How's it going out there, Ed?
It's going all right. You?
All right, good. So throughout this process, those of you watching on Facebook, please ask away. Ask questions, drop them in the comments. We'll start addressing them later. For now, though, let's just dive right in. We've got a character, Iron Fist, again, a forthcoming Netflix show all about him. What can we expect from this character? He's been in the Marvel canon since the early 70s. Axel, what's the story of Iron Fist?
Well, Iron Fist is one of the original kung fu superheroes. He was born in the 1970s during the Bruce Lee craze. And he's a perfect fusion of martial arts and superpowers. As a young boy, Danny Rand was taken on a mission up into the Himalayas by his father, a multimillionaire, accompanied by his mother. And tragedy befell them when his father was betrayed by his business partner. His father fell to his death. Danny's mother was eaten by wolves protecting him. And just so happened, this took place at the doorstep of the magical kingdom of Kunlun. That utopia was real, and Danny was brought in, and over years was forged to become the Iron Fist.
So we have a character that again, he worked to get martial arts prowess, and then eventually he fights a dragon that and then is bequeathed with this magical power of punch. Yes?
Yes, I mean, this is a power that was earned. It wasn't bestowed on him. It wasn't a radioactive spider or gamma radiation. Danny had to walk a gauntlet of tests to get to where he was, and he eventually got the power of the Iron Fist.
So again, we can see in this image right on the screen right now, there he is fighting the dragon.
Yeah.
Yes, and so in order to kind of gain it, he has to pass this gauntlet. Again, in the early issues, we were talking earlier about the very first introduction of this character.
Oh, it's the perfect comic book. You want to find a superhero with a more sort of tragic origin or a more earned set of powers.
And that's how he got the tattoo on his chest, correct? It's from fighting the dragon. I think he was
correct
trying to choke him out or something.
Yeah,
It imprinted himself on his chest. I've always wondered that, and I just found that out recently.
So we have this very interesting. Not only besides the ability to throw a really mean punch, right? You've also got this man. He's again the scion of an empire. He's an orphan. He owns one of the largest companies in the Marvel universe, and so you also have that element of his life. What's the story of Danny Rand outside of being Iron Fist?
Well, Danny Rand is, as you said, an orphan who's also a billionaire industrialist. He's a guy who strives hard. He's not like Tony Stark. He's not as mercurial or as vain or egotistical. He's looking to do good in the world, and he has this other life as Iron Fist. And as we'll get to it, I'm sure some of the best friends in the Marvel universe.
And I had a few questions for you. You have been writing this book. You have been writing this character. What is the story of Danny Rand to you?
Well, like Axel mentioned already, he spent 10 years of his life in Kunlun, sort of earning this power, and that he leaves Kunlun initially because he wants to get revenge for his parents' death, which he ends up not doing. He turns his back on getting revenge. So now he's in New York. He's this guy who's sort of torn between two worlds, where he's a bit of an outsider in both. And right now, where we join him, he's separated from Kunlun. He can't get back there, and the city sort of it's laying in ruins. So we have him sort of going through bit of a emotional distress that he can't get back to what is his adoptive home and help them out.
And Ed, you brought up he turns his back on revenge, which I think is a key point to who he is. In the original story, he tries to get revenge on his father's old business partner Meacham.
Yep. Meacham, yes.
And he ends up finding passion for him, because he finds that he was actually hurt afterwards. His frostbite and his legs were cut off. It's just a sad story all around. And he feels solace for him, and he just turns his back and lets him go. But even though he eventually dies by another hand.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Danny Rand he was born during that martial arts craze of the 1970s. So his story follows a lot of the familiar tropes, one of which is revenge. You killed my master, therefore I must kill you. In this case, he went after the man who was responsible for the death of his parents. But that's where he made the superhero turn. He realized that there was no victory to be found in vengeance, that he would lose himself, and that's when he started to walk the hero's path.
I can't help but think of a line from Deadpool where Colossus is like, there's only 5 or 6 moments. It's not every day, but where you just spare a friend or spare an enemy or whatever, and that's the path to being a superhero.
Now, I know, and also one thing I wanted to bring up with you about it is that this is a very interesting character from a legacy perspective. There aren't a ton of legacy heroes in the Marvel Universe, but in this regard, you could not have one more specifically tied to. He's the 66th Iron Fist. It's a job title, not a name. And how is writing that? How is getting inside that and writing in this legacy of stories going back to the 70s? How's that been?
It's been great. There's because of that. I feel like there's a lot to pull from with the past in Kunlun and where Danny sort of fits into that legacy and how he's paying tribute to that and how he actually fits in with the history of the Iron Fist and is he upholding or doing as good a job, I guess, as past Iron Fist. So I think it's really interesting, and another interesting aspect I think is how Kunlun has chosen each successive Iron Fist, and how that sort of plays into where Danny is right now, where his mindset is right now, where he feels like maybe he could be doing better.
So we have an Iron Fist, and the point of having an Iron Fist is that the Iron Fist requires things to punch. So kind of going into he's not a guy who has a real rogues gallery of villains. He's oftentimes set against societal ills, like the street crime level stuff. We'll get into later on his role in the Defenders. But again, he's a guy who he faces very specific enemies from his kung fu past, but also just kind of New York. Axel, what's his rogues gallery like?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, his rogues gallery really pulls sort of from the martial arts elements of the Marvel Universe. There's the Steel Serpent, who is of course from Kunlun as well. He's gone up against the Hand, which with their endless supply of ninja warriors. Many people might not know this, but Sabretooth from the X-Men, his first appearance was in Iron Fist number 14 to be exact.
And what you're looking at right now is the Hand. This is again an organization that I believe surfaces within the documentary made about the thing airing on Netflix now.
That's right.
But so it's again a pervasive villain, especially for this group, the Defenders, that we'll get into shortly. But we've also got again the consistent street level threats faced by the Defenders. We've got people from his past in Kunlun. It's an interesting kind of menagerie because his time spent with the Avengers have kind of given him just, yes, he fights Kang the Conqueror occasionally for funsies, but at the same time, he's got just kind of a solid base of grounding in this kind of kung fu life.
Very much so.
I wanted to talk about what you kind of brought up earlier about how he's got the best friends in the Marvel Universe, and I specifically want to talk about real quick Misty Knight and Colleen Wing. And what are those folks? How do they matter in his life?
Well, I think that what it comes down to, I think it starts with Luke Cage. As you said, Danny Rand throws the most potent punch in the Marvel Universe, and who's better equipped to take that punch than Luke Cage? So really, what it is, you've got an orphan guy who's looking for friends, and his best friend forever is Luke Cage, the original Buddy book.
Yeah.
And of course, that brings him to the orbit of Colleen and Misty, the Daughters of the Dragon. Again, it's interesting how all these Netflix characters, as we put them, sort of are all in each other's orbit and how they bounce off of one another. There's a very special chemistry between Danny and Luke. It sustained them, past the decades of the 70s.
Yeah, going into that real quick, because these are two characters very much in the 70s. And it seems like the only way that they got out of the 70s was together.
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they were rooted in the blaxploitation era flicks and the kung fu flicks of the 1970s. And when they started to get wobbly legs, they found magic in their pairing. This was the ultimate buddy book. White guy and black guy, urban and mystical. Street level guy and goofy guy. Who somehow found a way to get along in a profound way and solve problems that other people couldn't. A very popular book. It's enjoyed many prosperous runs, including the most recent one by David Walker and Sanford Gray.
And you brought up, obviously, the Ultimate Buddies, and obviously black guy, white guy, and I think they've had a clash in the past, which is it wouldn't be a Marvel book if there wasn't real-life ties and real lessons here. And, he's obviously poor. Danny Rand, obviously, is a billionaire. How is that factored in over the years? Because obviously it really shows there's lessons to be had here for people reading these books.
Well, I think it's in the contrast again. It's, friendship transcends the material, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Friendship, it's something primal. You've either got it or you don't. You either have chemistry or you don't. You can't fake it. And I think that these two guys are inexorably drawn to one another because there's something common about their souls. Again, the fact that they were both born of two cinematic traditions that hit their zenith in the 70s, and they found a way to be popular characters on the comic book page, but that they could get extra wind, in the 80s and 90s through their unique pairing. It's magical.
Yeah.
So I actually do want to throw it to Ed for a bit to talk a little bit about, again, besides his long-standing friendship and independent books and all that kind of stuff with Cage, now he's in the orbit of Misty Knight. He's had an on-again, off-again relationship with Misty Knight, and then he's also got this partnership with Colleen Wing. Ed, how does this kind of factor in your book coming up? How is this family that he's built around himself kind of factored into where his arc's taking him?
I wish I could say it does, but right now we actually kind of have Danny's out on his own, and what that actually means to him to be separate from them and not have that sort of support network around him. So yeah, he'll be strictly on his own, battling against some new fresh faces without being able to call on his friends for an assist.
Yeah, when you pick up Iron Fist #1, Ed and Mike Perkins' book, it's a very accessible read. If you've never read an Iron Fist comic book before, this is a great jumping on point. And what you meet is a Danny Rand who's traveling around the world out of costume, anonymous, participating in these illicit, extremely dangerous martial arts tournaments. And he's searching for something. And spoiler alert, you learn that his chi is ebbing, and he's very, very concerned about that. What does this mean? And he's looking to test himself in a major way. And so it's very much sort of a story where you find Danny Rand at his lowest, looking to get back to where he needs to be.
All right, and we actually do have a Facebook question coming in real quick. Quick reminder, if you're watching this on Facebook, by all means, drop in any questions that you have, drop in any, what you want to know coming up in the books, how these things factor, what we might see on screen. Be sure to ask any question that you have on this. Right now we've got one, which is, how likely are we to see some heroes for hire in the future? And I think that phrase alone, that's a real iconic phrase that's been with the Marvel Universe for a while. Can you tell us about the heroes for hire for a bit and
well,
what
it depends
their role
upon which heroes for hire you're talking about.
Give us the tour.
Very different manifestations of heroes for hire. What I can say is that those street-level characters, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Misty Knight, Colleen Wing, Daredevil, Elektra, Moon Knight, we're doubling down on all of them. We're very, very interested in all of those characters. I forgot to throw in the Punisher. So look for them to play big roles in the Marvel Universe in the coming year, without a doubt.
So you mentioned, obviously, it's very a zeitgeist of the times in the 70s and 80s. I want to know about adapting this book for modern times, because I picked it up, I read it, and to be completely full-on transparency, I never really connected with the character years ago, but I connected with this book, and my first takeaway was it felt very Jason Bourne-esque. He's searching for something, he's lost, and everyone can relate to that. Was that kind of the attempt here, was to kind of really make it up to the modern times and really even capitalize on a new swath of readers?
I think it was certainly part of the conversation that Ed and I had, along with editor Jake Thomas, about where do we start. He's a unique character. We knew that his current status quo in the aftermath of the last run, Kari Andrus's excellent The Living Weapon, had him, let's just say, in a position where he had, in saving Kunlun, he'd partially destroyed Kunlun. So Ed was the one who came up with the idea of Danny searching for his chi, and I think maybe Ed should weigh in at this point.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I thought it would be an interesting way to bring it in that, like you said, fresh readers could come into the book and get a sense of who Danny is without necessarily sort of spoon feeding it to the reader, but just really kind of get a sense of where he is and who he is, and through the story we get his backstory. We know who he is, but we wanted to make it very accessible, very easy to just jump on. If this is your first Iron Fist book, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a degree in Iron Fistology to be able to pick it up and read. And so, like I said, it's if we're gonna sort of lean into the kung fu history of it, And I'm, myself a huge fan of the 70s kung fu flicks. I really wanted to sort of give it that sort of flavor, but definitely, as you said, feel modern. It feel like something that's not a rehash of something that's been done a million times before, but something that is fresh and new.
As you can see on the screen, we have one of the little tropes Ed uses is explaining each martial arts move. Which is a cool little thing.
These are oftentimes used to really fun effect in this kind of book. Because again, you have tiger tail sweep, and lightning strike, and then sometimes just like Brooklyn sucker punch. Like he's a character that has a lot of versatility.
Moves that Walt is very familiar with and uses on a regular basis.
Constantly. Getting to work is a nightmare. But it's a fun character. It's always been a fun book, and it's very much a product of the time that it was started, but also it's kind of become a loving reference to a lot of that over time as well. Especially when you look at, again, getting back to really the core relationship that he's had in his life with Luke Cage. On some level, do you think that these folks, like Danny Rand is a character that seems very intellectually curious. He's the kind of guy who spent 10 years studying martial arts and then left to kind of make his own way in the world. And I think one reason that his relationship with Cage is very interesting is that he kind of went into that not knowing a whole lot of things about how things worked, both either as a superhero at the street level or just kind of as a guy operating in New York who is not a millionaire, right? So there's a lot of element of them teaching each other, and they've been together through as thick and thin as you can basically get in the Marvel world.
Absolutely. No, you've nailed it. I mean, again, it's a friendship that's unique because they come from opposite sides of the tracks, but they have similar souls. And absolutely, Danny's learned a lot through Luke.
There's one thing cool that I think about Danny Rand in particular is that he has been on a number of different Avengers teams. He has kind of taken a bit of an Iron Man role on some of them. Again, for fans who love the character of Iron Man, like Danny Rand has bankrolled an Avengers team.
Exactly.
And if you want to consider, like, again, Cap to some degree Tony's moral compass, you can kind of consider Luke in some degree Danny's moral compass, and like kind of playing at those like two very, very close friendships in the universe. What do you kind of see either moving forward or in recent history that are some examples of that kind of bond?
Well, the first one is with his deep pockets, he's able to fund the new Avengers. The fact that he's a martial arts character who's steeped in mysticism made him an ideal candidate to be a member of the Defenders. There's also another meaningful relationship in his life that we'll be picking up on in the very near future. We have a second Iron Fist book coming out in the fall called Iron Fists, plural, not one but two. And this will introduce a young girl named Paige. Well, actually, she was already introduced in Kari Andrews' Iron Fist: The Living Weapon. And she's a young girl, a teenage girl from Kunlun, who helps to save the world in The Living Weapon and will be the focal point for Iron Fists as she undergoes training to become the next Iron Fist.
So Kunlun's going to factor in a lot in that story.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, that's actually germane to a question we got from Facebook. Again, hit us up if you got those questions. Is how will Kunlun play a role either in this upcoming series, Ed, if you want to take that, or just kind of in general? Are you moving back towards it? Is this kind of the heart of the character? Are you moving towards the street level stuff away from Kunlun? I'm just kind of curious. And again, the Facebook folks are kind of wondering about Kunlun and its role in this mythos.
Kunlun will definitely play a role. I don't know how deep I want to get into it without spoiling, but everything that's happening to Danny in this first arc is very much because of where Kunlun is at this very moment, and as a sort of rollout result of everything that's happened to Kunlun.
Cool.
Hopefully that's not the...
No, you did perfect balance.
Dancing that line.
Yeah. Zip it.
I
zip
saw
it.
you staring at the screen. No more. But our fans are picking up what you were putting down. They have questions about Moon Knight. I know you kind of dropped him into the conversation about street level heroes, more to come.
My eye raised when he said that.
All right.
Yeah.
So what we got?
Well, I can't tell you what we're doing, but yeah, we love Moon Knight. We're in the midst of a fantastic story right now. Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood. And yes, we have big plans for Moon Knight moving forward as well. All of the so-called street-level characters, Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Moon Knight, the Punisher, are characters that really enrich the Marvel Universe and exist to tell very different types of stories. As you already know, we have a Defenders book planned, which leans hard into the Netflix show and the characters in that. So we have big plans. I can't enumerate on, but what I will say is that Moon Knight is a book I'm especially excited about. He's one of my personal favorite characters.
All right. So one thing, again, forthcoming in this next book, you talk about like a lot of different stories that you can tell with, and I think that Danny Rand is a perfect example of that because you can tell street level stories, you can tell Universal Cosmic Avengers level stories, but you can also tell these kind of fun, fighty stories, and we kind of see him enter into tournaments of sorts. And I know in this upcoming book we've got a couple. I don't know if they're adversaries necessarily so much as opponents coming up, and I know we have a few stills from that coming up. But in general, what's his kind of arc coming up tournament-wise? Who's he fighting next?
Ed, you want to take that?
Yeah, so he is fighting. He's entering into what's called the Trial of the Seven Masters, and I guess as the title sort of gives away, he'll be fighting 7 different kung fu masters who are from this island, this sort of mystical island called Li Shu. That Danny was not aware of, and he's sort of brought in to help them test their own kung fu masters, and so they've got 7 different masters. So I guess we've got the Eel of Blessed Waters, the Rat of 12 Plagues, Resourceful Snake, the Rabbit of Holy Flame, the Long-Armed Bull, the Mountain Slaying Bear, and the Divine Wolf, who will all play into the next arc as you said, as his opponents, as the ones he's got to face down and sort of prove to himself that he is, who he feels he is, and trying to sort of get back in touch with his chi and his own past, and yeah, so that's his opponents coming up.
They all sound so delightful and cheerful too.
Well, I hear that Duke is going to
pleasant.
end up beating the Clever Snake at some point in the tournament coming up. March Madness jokes, intersex of art. You got it. No.
I'm up for those.
Again, I always try to bring in outside information to kind of relate it to things. That's like what I love to do. But me and Walt saw Lego Batman together, and the idea of there was that Batman and Joker need each other. They need this rivalry to kind of elevate their game, and we've seen it in sports too. We were talking sports earlier, where a great team plays down to their opponents. I love in this book where he just wants a better matchup, and heading into this great tournament, like very excited. What was the ideology behind that to kind of really push him to his limits, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's going on. Is Danny? That's a lot of what we see in the first issues. Danny's just trying to push himself, and the problem when you're, a kung fu master, one of the best, in the Marvel U is there's not that. It's hard to find someone who's actually going to push and test you, and so that's what Danny is looking for, and that's exactly what he finds here in Li Shu.
So we actually do have a Facebook question. It's pertaining to a slightly earlier run, but we were talking about legacy in this character. This is there was an older gun-carrying Iron Fist and the Rubric Refraction Immortal Iron Fist, which is an on-ramp for a lot of folks who are fans of this character. Will he play a role in your books? So I believe that's Orson Randall?
Yes.
Yes, so again, earlier Iron Fist, the notion of this character as a legacy character. How is this kind of factoring into the books potentially?
Orson and that sort of past is not really going to factor into this this lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyone looking for Orson, unfortunately, he won't be in this first arc. There will be lots of stuff that does tie into his legacy that I'm not going to give away, but yeah, no Orson, I'm afraid.
Can we talk Punisher? I just want to fit that in there.
So, getting just generally. So for folks kind of tuning into either the Netflix series or looking for a solid on-ramp, again, this book is coming out this spring, I believe?
That's next week.
Oh, it's next week?
Yeah. Ed's book is coming out next week, the 22nd. And Iron Fists, which is Kari Andrews and Afu Chan, that book comes out in the fall.
So if there was kind of this character in kind of one trait, what would that kind of be for you? Having been, again, he's appeared in all different kinds of forms. He's appeared in all different, like, again, the authentic 70s, the 80s as he kind of changed and became part of a duo throughout the recent reinvention of him, and also just kind of the strong legacy of it. How would you kind of describe this character and just like at the heart of it for folks who are interested in kind of coming onto this?
Kung Fu superhero.
All right. That about does it, right?
He's an honest dude who's just trying to sort of. I think a lot of it is he's just trying to figure out who he really is, and trying to just push himself to be the best possible, Danny Rand that he can be.
Yeah, I mean, when he was a kid, he lost everything on that mountaintop in Kunlun, and gained everything in the power of the Iron Fist. So this is like I said, there's great tragedy at the heart of this character. No matter how much he laughs, there's tragedy at the core of his origin, and he carries a great responsibility in being the one who wields the power of the Iron Fist. So there's layers to this character. There's tragedy and humor to be found in the character. I think he's one of our richest characters in that regard.
And so we actually do have a Facebook question that is, again, you mentioned Kung Fu Superhero. This questioner wants to ask, will Shang-Chi continue to be a rival for Danny? Is there a possibility of a team-up? And you're going to have to explain that question to some folks.
Sure. Well, for those that don't know, Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, is another character, fantastic character, who was born during the martial arts craze of the 70s. And like Iron Fist, he's a fusion of martial arts and another genre, in this case, espionage. And I love me some Shang-Chi as well, and so does Marvel. So I think it's not at all far-fetched that you'll see Shang-Chi appearing at some point in time, either with his path intersecting that of Danny Rand or someone else in the Marvel canon.
All right. So, again, if you have any final questions on Facebook, do send them in real quickly. We'll see if we can get to them. But kind of looking at the universe as a whole, he's been an Avenger. He kind of factors into that world. And, again, we kind of see him in this group on the Defenders. As we look kind of forward, again, with what Netflix is doing and what these books are doing, it's really when they come together, these kind of characters shine. And so what's his role in the Defenders looking forward?
In the Defenders, it's not defined yet. I mean, that's still coming into focus right now. But I think that what you can look forward to is an ensemble book that will play to his strengths. I have every faith in creative team, Bendis and Marquez, that they're going to be able to pull that out.
Absolutely. So, and again, we've been talking about, the universe is going separately on with Netflix quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so when you kind of see these characters get adopted for the screen, you see some changes, you see some adaptations, but you also see a lot of the core remaining. And Mike, I guess I was just wondering, what are you looking forward to potentially in this adaptation?
Oh, the Netflix adaptation?
Yeah. Were you at the red carpet on Monday, by any chance?
No, it was snowed out on Tuesday, and then it was last night. I love how the Netflix adaptation paralleled with the Defenders is more gritty and more granular than, say, an Avengers, I guess. I mean, they're both very relatable, but it's great to kind of see almost the investigation process and the street level processes that you see with like their counterparts as compared to on a bigger scale. And so that's really what excites me about that. And it's great just seeing everyday things kind of delve into the comics in that way. I don't know if I'm talking too general, but that's what I see in the Defenders versus, like the Avengers and things like that. Just learning more about Danny Rand, I think I've seen a couple of the episodes, and he seems, even with tragedy and great, all the hurdles he's had to go through in his life, he seems to be one of the more, I guess, probably from his martial arts background, one of the more positive characters still. He has kind of still belief in the good in people. So that's kind of good to see, too, because we don't see that very often. There's a lot of dark characters out there. So that's great, too. It's all just counterparts to everything else. And it's, yeah.
He's a deeply spiritual character, yes.
All right, and soon enough, we will see him again in this forthcoming book coming out next week, and then another one coming this fall, you said?
Yes, Iron Fists. Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. And then, of course, is Eternal Bromance with Luke Cage. Again, the guy who throws the best punch and the guy who can take the punch.
Exactly.
So, again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, this has been a lot of fun. This is a really cool character, a really long, wonderful history. Axel, I want to thank you for coming on in. Michael, as always. Ed, thank you so much for chiming in. And what can we look forward to in this book? When are we looking after next week?
I missed that. What was that?
Oh, any further plugs?
Just pick it up. I think it's a great book. Mike Perkins is doing amazing work, and I think people are going to have a lot of fun with it.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everyone for coming on in, and thank you for watching and asking questions. This has been ABC News Digital. Thank you.
Tillerson. He and I talked about the State Department budget and how he decides to allocate that. It may be that there are some embassies that don't need a lot more security and some that do, so we give him the flexibility to do that. The gentleman in the back had a question.
Many countries around the globe did take very seriously President Trump that he will cut the foreign aid, because most of the countries getting U.S. aid were not with the U.S., supporting terrorism against the U.S., and also they were not voting with the U.S. So how does President Trump feel now about those countries? Will they continue the aid, because U.S.